Morning.
Good morning.
Gorgeous day here. And we start with public comment. So we have 2 minutes for any speaker wishing to speak on any topic before the board. Just come to the podium and state your name and address, please. Is anyone, for the second time, is anyone wishing to speak before the board? Okay, the third and final time, is anyone wishing to speak before the board? Thank you. I'd ask for approval of the county board minutes for April 23rd. They're on page 11 in our packet.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the county board minutes by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. We want to acknowledge receipt of the approved committee minutes. We have land records for December 7th, 2018.
Move to approve.
A second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve or to acknowledge the receipt of the committee minutes for land records meeting by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, Economic Development Authority, January 24th, 2019. Need a motion to acknowledge receipt.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the Economic Development meeting by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Consent comments and approval of agenda. Mr. Fritz?
I have no changes.
Commissioner Ward?
I'd like to pull 6.10 just for a separate vote, please.
Okay.
Okay, 6.10 will become 7.01. Any announcements at the end, or?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, I think that I would like to have a little further discussion on 6.11, so I'd like to pull that one.
Okay, 6.11 becomes 7.02.
Yeah, and then I'm having the pleasure of going to committee meetings now that I didn't know anything about. So I went to the Southeast Minnesota Emergency Medical Services meeting, so I'll give a brief report under 8.
Thank you. Okay, I have some announcements at the end. Commissioner Olson?
No, nothing for me.
Commissioner Jacob? Attorney
No, thank you.
O'Loughlin, excuse me. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a revised agenda for the consent business. All those in favor of the revised agenda signify by saying aye.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, I think we need a motion,
Yes,
excuse
yes.
me. 6.1 became 7.01 and 6.11 became 7.02.
Okay. And I move to approve the amended agenda.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob and seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the amended agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor of the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Fritz, the consent business, please.
All right, the consent business, committee recommendation 6.1, approve mission statement, bylaws, and resolution of Community Services Advisory Committee. 6.2, under department recommendations, award bid of county office building remodeling to Weiser Brothers. 6.3, approve renewal of agreement with Counseling Associates for Rule 25 assessments. 6.4, approve renewal of agreement with Common Ground for Rule 25 assessments. 6.5, approve renewal of agreement with Empower Comprehensive Treatment Center, CTC, for Rule 25 assessments. 6.6, approve interpreter agreement between Project Fine and Department of Corrections Courthouse Unit. 6.7, approve emergency shelter agreement with Winona State University. 6.8, award bid of annual supply of gasoline and diesel fuel to Severson Oil Company. 6.9, approve advertising agreement. 6.10 has been pulled, and 6.11 has been pulled. 6.12, authorize disposal of excess furniture and equipment. 6.11, confirm payment of disbursements. And 6.14, approve resolution to reappoint highway engineer. That should conclude the consent business.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get that 6.10 had been pulled. So
Yes.
that actually would be 7.02 and,
You had it, 7.01. Two. Yeah.
Do earlier.
oh, I thought you were pulling 6.1. You said 6.10. Excuse me. Not a problem. We still got it. 2 had been amended. Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the consent business, please?
Yeah, I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Myers, seconded by Commissioner Olson, to approve the consent business as read. Any discussion?
Well, I did just want to make a comment. I think it's excellent that we're able to, the bid for the gasoline and diesel that's from Severson, that's less than what the state procurement numbers are, so it's actually saving us money, and we're doing it locally, so.
That's good.
Supporting local businesses, I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor of approval of the consent business as read signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Thank you. 7.01, which was the original 6.10 on page 58. This is the approve the non-union wage grids for 2019 to 2021.
Yes, and I asked the Paulette, just, I'm sticking with my, there's no pay for performance issue addressed in this, as is none of the union contracts, so I cannot support it at this time.
Okay, any further discussion? Can we have a motion to approve or?
So moved. Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Jacob. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the non-union wage grids for 2019 to 2021 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-1. Okay, we have 6.11, which is on page 61, and that's 7.02. Do we have some discussion, Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, if I could find my
Looking for your
button. If I can find my button, I'll talk, yeah. I really wanted to start with just some questions, and I'm not sure if staff can answer them, but that's where maybe I'll start. So I had been, I think, at the AMC meeting where there was a conversation from Bowser and MCIT about one watershed, one plan, or the watershed approach. And I was under the impression that it's the LCCMR funds, that grant making that's actually driving the kind of the watershed grant approach. But it looks like there, in fact, are grants that are available that aren't necessarily offered that way, so that there would be grant money that we would potentially miss out on if we didn't have something in addition to the watershed joint powers agreement. So I kind of wanted to try and get some more information really to understand that a little bit better. So I guess that's the starting point.
Okay, does anybody have any information? Any staff have any information? Thank you, we really appreciate this.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sheila.
As far as the question about grant applications, from what I understand, even if the Water Resources Board does not exist and if there is not a regional entity, local entities can still partner together and do a grant application. So from what I understand in my conversations with Bowser, we're not at a disadvantage by doing a grant application without a regional entity. In that grant application, you can establish a regional agreement with neighbors to do that grant application. So it's just a little bit more busy work, but you're not at a disadvantage by not having that entity in place.
And then, so the summary that with the, because I had asked for points in favor, and like just trying to get a bead on the pros and cons of it. That 319 federal grants, that's Clean Water Act money. And there is money that comes through that grant and other grants that isn't designated on a watershed level.
Correct.
So there is grant money that is
There is
available.
there is grant money, yes.
Okay. And so in the summary, there's a statement about common geomorphology, and I just wanted to, like, okay, I'm a layman, I wanted to understand that a little better. So that is if our counties are all karst, and so if there's grant money that's available for the karst region, then the regional board would be in a position to ask for it if there was some
Correct.
kind of regional entity or
Right.
if the groups wanted to get together. And then what I was kind of trying to figure out, what did Walt say? But what is that? What is this referring to?
Oh.
Recent priorities by Governor Waltz, yeah.
Oh, yes, that was an initiative by Governor Walz to work on a general EIS for groundwater, and that was there was a listening session in Red Wing, I believe about 2 months ago, and that's where that is coming from, and by not having the Water Resources Board, which originally was established for groundwater concerns, that would have been a natural role for that organization to play in that initiative and moving forward.
I guess the last thing that I'm interested in, maybe we don't know, all the counties were going to vote and have some of the other counties already voted, and do we know
Yes.
what they've decided?
Our county voted to disband. They supported that, from what I understand, Fillmore has. I'm not sure what the status is on the other counties at this time.
And those two were thumbs down.
There's 5 that have voted so far. Wabasha just came in yesterday. They voted
Okay.
to disband. All 5 of them voted to disband.
Okay. So at this point, even if we voted to stay, it would be a 5-4.
No. The other ones have not voted yet.
Oh, they haven't
They
voted.
haven't had the resolution on their
There would have to
agendas
be-
yet.
If any other 2 counties vote in favor of disbanding that have not voted, then it won't really matter what Winona County does.
Right, yeah, okay, that was kind of what I was trying to understand, before we spend time.
Right.
There's no votes against disbanding.
Yeah, okay,
at this
That's correct.
thanks, I appreciate it.
time.
So, Commissioner Ward.
Again, the Southeast Minnesota Water Resource Board was established long before I, was involved, and so I don't know the real guts of why and how. But if we buy into this whole concept, and that's in my mind still questionable, of one watershed, one plan, it was supposed to, the one watershed, one plan is supposed to make this whole water issue simpler. But I don't see that totally playing out, because the last time we had a one watershed, one plan for the Root River, there was more money coming in from different Bowser resources, and so there's a lot of money around for water through different agencies. Now, again, if we buy into this one watershed, one plan for the whole state of Minnesota, it is supposed to make things easier and better. And I want it to be easier and better for the landowners, not the agencies. I personally don't want to have to spend a lot of agency staff time filling out grant applications. And again, this was something that was philosophically talked about when we formed the Root River One Watershed, that this will make it easier. It'll be a one-stop for landowners to get resources for their land and everything. Now, I understand we have to give it some time to get this all figured out, and not everybody's in a plan yet. They're working towards that. But the joint, and I think the big deciding factor, as I understand talking to a few other commissioners, was Olmsted County's role and they've been a gracious host to many of our joint powers boards in the past of offering coordinating staff. I mean, they worked with this. They worked with the 800 megahertz, group. I know there's more social service groups so they have been gracious in giving us administrative help, but now they've come to the realization that they can't afford that anymore. And particularly, rough figure, they say one administration costs them $100,000. So they are of the mindset, which I can totally understand, that they need to cover those costs. And so one of the big things on this, and I think we'll see it in maybe some future things, is that we can't afford, we can't all afford that. So I think put faith in the one watershed, one plan, and people like Mr. Buck and Sheila Harms to, get this money coordinated. And again, make it easy for the landowner. I'm not trying to make it easy for, and staff and administration, but we can't complicate it, because I see a lot of times when you get a grant, so much of the money is towards, quote, administration. It's not for, boots on the ground, projects on the ground, and that's always been an irritant for myself, is that we spend lots of money administrating, doing paperwork, going to meetings, but then the landowner isn't getting the project done as efficiently as maybe they should, or with as much money. So I guess I put trust in, the system moving forward, but we have to watch it to see if it's really going to.
Well, as far as assisting the landowners, I know Daryl and his staff work, if a landowner comes to his office, they don't necessarily know what watershed they're in, but Daryl does. And then so he's able to work with accommodating them, so it's not a confusing issue for the landowner.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so I don't know how much of this you want me to go back over that I went over at the last meeting. I can run down the kind of timeline of what happened if you'd like, but our Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board had been administering 5 different grants. Those were all picked up by different organizations, so they all continue to be administered as they were, at a savings of immediate $100,000 savings to the taxpayer. Administration had been $50,000, $5,000 per county, 10 counties. Homestead County said we need to double that, so there's your $100,000. If we can do the good work through local SWCDs or any one of the other many water organizations that exist, I feel like we owe it to a taxpayer to not have administration just for the sake of administration. So there really wasn't any resistance from any of the Water Resources Board. It was a 7-2 vote, and the 2 that voted against it were not against disbanding. They just wanted maybe another month before they went through with it. So, and I will just kind of go back over quickly. So for 18 months, we worked with TSA, Technical Assistance Board, to try to merge. We weren't able to get a merger. And then following that, Homestead County doubled their dues. The 1-1 plan seemed to be getting the grants more than what we weren't able to really compete that well with 1-1. That's where Bowser seems to be focusing. Our executive director resigned. All this really happened at the same time. Steele County indicated at that meeting that they would withdraw because they didn't want to pay $5,000 to 1-1 and $5,000 to Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board. Rice County said that they would withdraw if the dues went up. So then you don't even have a full region, you have a checkerboard region. And Fillmore County put on the agenda to consider disbanding. Dodge County offered to facilitate the disbanding process. We were able to carry on all our good work through dispersing the grants to different organizations within the area. I discussed this with my alternate. I discussed it with our local SWCD. And at the last SWCD meeting, that board passed a resolution to support the disbanding. And then it was put up, a resolution was sent out to all the counties, and 5 counties so far have already voted, and they voted in favor of disbanding, and the other 4 counties will be the 6th county to vote today at this point. So that's kind of how things played out, and I support it. And I also kind of, when we get to budgeting, I might consider the $5,000 that was coming here or to this group, whether that, I might want to talk about whether that should go to our local SWCD. It wouldn't increase our budget, but it would keep money local for what I feel is the most, of the 30-some groups that are working in Southeast Minnesota, I feel like the local SWCD is the most streamlined, most effective, putting the most projects on the ground with probably the least amount of administrative overburden. So as a member on the Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board, that's what's transpired. And
Thank you for that update. I had some questions, and I noticed in the mission statement for the Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board, it specifically does mention karst, the karst region. Are there any other regional boards that focus on water quality in the karst region, or with karst as a defining, piece of it or anything? Because to me, that's the part that's truly unique to our southeastern counties here in Minnesota.
Yes, it is. Yes. Well, there are other regional, there is the Southeast SWC Technical Service Joint Powers Board, which Commissioner Jacob mentioned. There was a merger effort being discussed between those two boards, and that board is governed by SWCD representatives from the 11 Southeast Minnesota counties. So they do have some regional grants. I'm not sure, if right now they're at full capacity, if they don't want to add any more at this time, but they do regional grants and in different initiatives. And then we also have the Basin Alliance for the Lower Mississippi in Minnesota, BOM. That is also mentioned on the fact sheet or the assessment sheet that was emailed earlier. That they do not do any grants. It is purely a networking group regionally that we have speakers come in and discuss regional initiatives and concerns, which does include karst. But they're not governed by a board, and they do not do grants. But that would be kind of a networking place to try and team up with each other and learn and try and do things from that.
Thank you. Do you know if, at least once in the alternatives, it's mentioned that additional workload is a question and things like that. Do you know if any of the regional programs have had to add staff or are considering adding staff?
No, they are not.
To take on? Okay. And I looked at some of the issues with the Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board. County members have not always agreed. That's like a given. That's
Correct.
Cost membership, that's something that we would need to address. Executive director, the position was vacant. But at our meeting when Commissioner Jacob gave us an update last meeting, we also had a report from the local deed committee, and they reported a difficult time without a executive director, but they got through it and they worked it out. And so I mean that's sort of, that happens. The executive director is not there, and grants still need to be done. So the board
Correct.
huddles on or whatever. So I mean I'm not really too excited about any of those reasons, but the 7-2 vote to disband, if we wanted to create a new regional group addressing karst, how much effort would that take, or is that even a possibility? I see some lights. Okay. I just wondered if you have
I know.
any experience on that, or.
No, but at the special meeting of the Water Resources Board, one thing they also did was vote on a transition plan. Mm-hmm. And that transition plan says that water planners in Southeast Minnesota would meet informally or coordinate informally. And I'm assuming, I'm not sure what that meant when that was drafted, but I think a natural place for that to happen would be after the BOM meetings, since we're already there, and just try and coordinate some initiatives. I know that, yes, the vote was to disband at this time, but I did hear some conversation from commissioners from other counties indicating that, well, okay, this one is done, but once the one watershed, one plans all get in place, maybe that would be a good time to set up a regional entity, and maybe that would be specific to karst. I don't know, but anyway, it's totally not off the table, but.
Okay. Do we have an update coming up on our one watershed, one plan? I know the Root River is ongoing, as we voted on that. And the others, we haven't had a report in quite some time, so I would kind of like to know where we are on those.
Okay.
We have asked for that in the past, so so the balm is kind of.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but July 9th, we have a working session scheduled planning for providing an update on water and kind of a comprehensive look at it.
And at the June 25th meeting, I would like to have a hearing at the county board meeting for the update. Well, it'll be an amendment to the Winona County water plan. This is just kind of just filling the gap until we move into one watershed, one plan. So I am in the process of updating and getting input from a lot of people. And the only thing, what Bowser requires right now, because this board did sign a resolution for us to extend the current water plan until 2023. That is contingent on an amendment to the water plan that we have, which includes a required update to the executive summary and the implementation schedule. So that is nearly complete. I want to send out a 30-day notice on that in the next couple of days. And so once the 30-day notice is done, then we'll have a 10-day notice for the hearing for June 25th, and that'll keep us on schedule with Bowser for our plan. So that plan is referencing the watershed restoration and protection strategies, so that it's as much like a one watershed, one plan as I can get and still be a county water plan. So that's on the schedule. As far as moving forward with one watershed, one plan, for the Mississippi River, Winona, and La Crescent, there is an RFP open right now. I don't think it's a good time to move forward with it at this time because the Zumbro watershed is right in the middle of their one watershed, one plan development, and we have staff from Wabasha and Olmsted County. It would not be fair to them to do two at the same time, so I'd rather wait until they're done, then move forward.
Okay. And on the Southeast Soil and Water Conservation District Technical Support Joint Powers Board, that's an awful. Who is, does Winona County have a specific representative on that, or a voting representative, or?
Yes.
And
Yes,
who,
that's a SWCD supervisor, and
okay, Daryl.
Yeah, I've seen Bill at those meetings.
okay, Bill Rokamp.
Okay, all right. I also noticed on the website, I know we had some discussion of this, on the website for the Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board, there's no agenda for the March meeting or minutes posted. So that's just kind of leaves us without a little piece of information. And I also know that we usually have a rule that the chair speaks last, but we never seem to honor that. So we have Commissioner Jacob and Commissioner Ward on a speaking list.
Yeah, well, I had turned my light on actually quite a while ago when you started talking about karst region. When you first went into that, I think it'd be fair to assume that all of our existing water groups, there's none of them that specifically ignore the karst region, and of the existing grants that this group was working with, all 5 or 6 of them here, I don't see that there's any ignoring of the karst area. So I think it's a given that we and in fact at the meeting before last at the SWCD, they dove pretty deeply into sinkholes in Winona County and how we treat those, how how that maybe directly relates to or conduit to the groundwater. So I don't think it's being ignored by any of these groups. So I feel very comfortable that any one of these 33 groups can look at karst and evaluate it and treat it and deal with it.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Speaking of karst, that group, that, in my knowledge, that Southeast Minnesota Water Resource Group, Rice, Dodge, Mauer, karst doesn't exist like it does here in those counties. So, I mean, even the representation of that group is not totally karst. I think, actually, when you want to talk karst, you maybe need to go across the river. I think there's more karst geology in the Wisconsin side than there is on, going any further west than probably just the edges even of Olmsted County, because the topsoils and everything changed considerably, the amount of topsoil, the bedrock. So, I mean, karst it's kind of a hot topic in our little corner of the state. The rest of the state, you say karst and it doesn't register with them. So, I mean, as far as this group trying to protect the karst, it's kind of almost a split group, too. They recognize it. They understand the importance of it, but it's not totally even within that group.
Hard to get Steel and Rice to
Yeah,
on board with any grants that go towards karst.
Karst, yeah.
I think that was my point, that no one else is going to carry the flag for karst.
Right,
They're
right.
not ignoring it, but they're not going to take it up.
Right. Well,
So,
you referenced
thank
you referenced the mission statement, and that triggered the thought. I do have a question for Sheila. When we talk about the Winona County Water Plan, are all our small cities included in that water plan?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So if we want to regulate the amount of lawn fertilizer and chemical weed killer in the city of Winona, we can? Because a lot of those, I see curb and gutter and I see stormwater, and that's a big,
Well, it's all a big deal.
You talk about a straight conduit. That doesn't even have to go through any dirt. That goes right through the pipe. So do we, in that
The water plan, when it gets sent out, it will be sent to the city officials for acknowledgement and for their input.
Okay. All right. So we would have control, or we could make recommendations.
We can make recommendations. I'm not saying this is a control document.
Okay. All right. Well, let's treat us all alike. I mean, what's fair is fair.
Okay,
Thank you.
Commissioner Meyer and then Commissioner Jacob.
Thanks. Okay. So it certainly sounds like from the whole narrative that, that it really was a difficult meeting and that you were sort of put into a corner, as was the whole organization. So, I mean, I can really see how that's true. And I also appreciate your experience and being on the board the years that you have and sort of seeing all this stuff develop. I was trying to get my head around one watershed, one plan, and looking at the MPCA website. And what I took away from that is not that it makes it simpler, but that it could make it more effective. Because if the issue in a watershed is not in your governmental boundary, you can have a joint agreement with whatever entity where that actually is so that you could implement change there. So I think the goal, now I'm not saying it achieves it, but I think the goal of one watershed, one plan is really to be more effective, to potentially end up spending less in the long run. But well, I don't know if that's possible. But so I see the value of that, and I see that we're also not 100% there. So, I mean, I see also the value of having a bigger entity that can apply for grants on a regional scale. And I mean, we are in one of the few regions of the state that doesn't have a regional planning authority. That's a whole other topic, but there are certain grants for a whole bunch of areas and not just maybe water, where if you don't have that kind of an organization, you're not in a position to take advantage of money and projects that come available. So I do see the value of that. I had a question just in terms of, I attended the soil water meeting the other day, and Mr. Jacob, you were talking about the effectiveness of the soil water as an organization, and I get that. Am I right that the soil water's focus is primarily ag? do they get grants for any other areas besides ag?
I think Darrell Buck would be better positioned to answer that than me.
And here's why I say that. So I was looking on the Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board. I saw that they had gotten a sizable grant to do septic system work. Clearly not ag related, but trying to help with.
I would have to say it's rural land,
Yeah.
not necessarily ag, but.
Yeah.
Darryl kind of
Okay.
does.
So yeah, I'm interested in kind of get a better understanding of.
Right now, we don't have any grants that are specific to municipalities, but as Commissioner Ward said, we do work with providing either cost share for well ceilings sometimes. We don't have cost share for septic systems, but we are part of the Ag BMP loan program where we approve those types of practices for loans also, whether it's a individual septic system, or we've also approved the practice for a kind of a joint septic problems and also for wells too. But we would be able to apply for grants if something came up that we, most of the time it's not going to be our individual, but it'd be a joint. If the city of Winona, city of Goodview, St. Charles, Lewiston, whatever, had something come up where they wanted a grant, some of the clean water funds, we can do it as their representative. So
Okay.
that the option is there.
Okay.
And aren't you more constant, you also do deal with conservation practices. So that's not necessarily ag, it could be somebody who owns forest land or.
Yep.
Sure. Okay.
You know.
And we also work with the cities if they have a large development, have a stormwater plan
Yeah.
developed, we review that with them. The planning department is a lot of times involved with those too, because a lot of times they turn into Wetland Conservation Act issues also.
So where I've been thinking about, and I've really enjoyed hearing different opinions and hearing what other folks have to say, because I've really been kind of trying to teach myself about this area and sort of come up with the thoughts. I am wondering if it's possible to, I'm inclined to vote no on the withdrawal, but understand that it may be inevitable, it may happen regardless of that. But that keeps the door open to have a conversation about the potential of having some kind of a joint powers agreement in place. No staff, no fees, meet periodically, but to be in place for grant opportunities that might arise, and to potentially use then staff of the member entities, rather than having a staff. Now, maybe that's just not workable, and you guys could shoot that apart, but it was kind of, I'm sort of trying to think about how to reserve the best of what's there, understanding that, the issue with staffing and doubling the price, and that other counties are, don't want to be involved in that as well. I mean, just trying to sort that out.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacob, and then we have Commissioner Ward.
As we go back to the one watershed, one plans, I don't know if that question was directed at me or whether that was for the full board but I think what's before us today is, do we support Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board or do we not? They haven't put any of that forward. What they're asking for is to disband and use the many other groups to serve the functions of government, utilize what already exists rather than continue to layer on more. So I have talked with Matt Flynn from Olmsted County and Rich Hall from Wabasha County, and Sheila Harms has brought to the Soil and Water Conservation District about our expanding the rest of Winona County into the 1-1 plan. I've been resistant of that just because I feel like it's another expansion of government. But some of the conversations that took place at the Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board is that all the commissioners, myself included, kind of feel as though the 1-1 plan is going to come whether we want it or not. And this is a way for many of those commissioners, myself included, to reluctantly warm up to the 1-1 plan. Okay, so it's going to come, it's a new level, it's a lot of administration, there's a lot of tentacles to it, there's a lot of pieces that fit together awkwardly. But maybe we can embrace that if we let go of this one other organization that we're spending more tax, $100,000 taxpayers' money before we even have a single meeting. So there's per diems and mileage on all these meetings, and all that still doesn't put a single program on the ground. So this is an opportunity to save taxpayers' dollars, continue with all the programs that are functioning. I believe I would be able to embrace the one watershed, one plan as it comes to the rest of Winona County, although I know my fellow commissioners don't get it. I know Matt Flynn, I tried to explain to him that the Whitewater is now connected to the Mississippi, which goes almost down to La Crescent. And Matt Flynn just could not get his head around that somehow Winona, Olmsted County would be in a one watershed, one plan that would extend all the way down to near La Crescent. He just was like, you don't get it, Steve. That's not the way it is. I think Matt doesn't get it. And Wabasha County, same thing. They're focused on trying to get their other watershed, the Zumbro right now, so they're just like, we're not interested in working on this watershed plan with Winona County just now. We got this other one that we're trying to square away, and we're going to see how that works. And I think once that piece is put in place, then we can talk with Olmsted and Wabasha, and I'll support the one watershed, one plan at that time. But it'll probably be harder for me to support if we're doing this yet, if we're doing Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board and we're doing that. I mean, there's got to be some streamlining somewhere. It can't just be ever increasing boards and entities governing water.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
To address Commissioner Meyer's concern, will this group go away? And my experience is no. The water people are a very passionate group. They know each other all on a first name basis. I mean, they're very eclectic, and they work together, and the soil and water boards and the Sheila Harmses across the state and the Bowser people, they're all, there's a great amount of passion for water in Minnesota, and in particular Southeast Minnesota. The one thing I would like to see us somehow in all of government actually is go to more base funding versus all these grants. But there has to be accountability, Every time you create a grant, you create an administration, both at a federal or a state level, and then it goes down to the state. So I think if we could push more for base funding, it would take a lot of the administration out of these dollars, which I think we all would appreciate. But again, with accountability as to how these dollars are spent and what practices they go to and everything. So with all that's said and done, I don't think we'll lose the passion for water and keeping clean water in Southeast Minnesota and working on that. So I will move to approve the Southeast Minnesota Water Resource Board disbandment at this time, and we'll see what happens with all these other boards and all the other water issues.
The chair had some comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I can still put a motion on it.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. And still
Okay.
have discussion.
Right, and my job is to summarize, so I do appreciate, I think we've had a fairly robust discussion. There are many reasons, there are reasons to disband, and there are reasons to continue a regional focus. So I think both of those were expressed quite well. I personally am concerned about the grant processes and the staff capability to manage grants in addition to what they're already managing. So I think I appreciate that we've had a good discussion here. And we now have a motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Jacob, to approve the resolution to disband the Southeast Minnesota Water Resources Board Joint Powers Agreement. So is there any further discussion on that topic? Okay. Commissioner Olson.
I came here today after reading all this, and specifically to listen to the discussion, and I'm gonna support the motion. reluctantly, but I do believe that the mission will carry on. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for those comments and for your thought process. So now we do have a motion to disband, made by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Jacob. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to disband the Southeast Water Resource Board Joint Powers Agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Aye. Or nay? Okay, the motion carries 3-2. All right, let's go to item 7.1, which is discuss and/or appoint citizen advisory committee volunteers, and that's on page 71 of your agenda packets. Okay, we have one vacancy on the Board of Adjustment, and we have received 2 applications. We have one vacancy on both the Personnel Board of Appeals and the Stockton Rolling Stone Minnesota City Watershed, and we have no applications. So I would suggest we take up the Board of Adjustment vacancy with those 2 applications and then discuss a strategy for the other 2. So we have Mr. Reddick and Mr. Flynn applying for the Board of Adjustment. Commissioner Jacob.
Sure. I'll just make note that Township Officer Flynn currently is Hillsdale Township Officer. He was very active in our comp plan update. He was the chair of that comp plan committee. He's very active with the Township Officers Association. I think he's got a really good grip on politics of Winona County and comp plan, and I think he's an excellent candidate and easy to support.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Want me to go?
Yeah, I didn't see a light, so.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I was watching your eyes.
I was looking at the lights. I thought a flicker, but I wasn't sure. Okay, Commissioner Meyer, excuse me.
When I served on the Planning Commission, I served with Mr. Reddick, and he was the chair during that first year, and then he transitioned off. So I've worked with Bob Reddick, and I know that he cares, and I know that he is fair, and he was the chair that year, and he really did a great job handling a lot of, contentious issues, so I think he'd be a great candidate, too.
Commissioner Ward, thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
It's unfortunate that we just appointed the Board of Adjustment and, circumstances, the individuals leaving the community, but that happens. I would have to support Mr. Flynn. He has applied numerous times for our positions, which I have to give anybody credit that's willing to go through our process more than once, because it's not an easy process just to fill out the application. I've known Mr. Flynn for many years. His children and my children showed sheep together, and he had a great compassion for the 4-H, and the lay of the land in Winona County. And having Hillsdale at one time had their own zoning and planning commission, as did a small number of our townships. And Mr. Flynn was, I believe, the administrator, served the administrative function of that for his township. So he's very well aware of how things work. And he's disciplined in that his educational background has provided him a lot of discipline in. He's a dentist. You don't want a dentist to screw up when he's working on your mouth and stuff. So you want somebody that follows detail and pays attention to detail. So his education has done that. One of the issues I have with Mr. Reddick is that he does live in Wilson Township, and citizens of mine, constituents of mine, have brought this to my attention, is that Wilson Township has their own planning and zoning and Board of Adjustment. So yes, they follow the Winona County rules, but they can be more restrictive. So we would have an individual making rules for people outside that, geographic boundary, that his township has, a little different take on it. And that is an issue with a lot of my constituents, that we have people on some of these boards that live in the city of Winona that make rules for us, that don't live by the rules. And Mr. Reddick would somewhat fall in that same, a little bit different take, but somewhat in that same category, is that he is a Wilson Township person. So I would have to support Mr. Flynn. I think he'd be fair and has background and information that would be very hard to replace because of his experiences with Hillsdale Township.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll move to support Mike Flynn.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob and seconded by Commissioner Ward to support Mike Flynn for the appointment to for the vacancy of the Board of Adjustments. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of supporting Mr. Flynn for this position signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Nay. Okay, the motion fails. Commissioner Olson.
I'll make a motion to appoint Bob Reddick.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to support Mr. Reddick for the position, the vacancy on the Board of Adjustment, made by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
I do have a question,
Okay.
and this goes not to the individuals and such, but it's our process. What are we judging these people on? I mean, is it their job experiences? If they were applying for a job in Winona County, we have criteria that needs to be met. When we have these committees, yes, we take the application and everything, but I don't know that we're fairly evaluating our choices. And maybe we need to change our application in the future or somehow come up with a pointing, some type of accountability pointing system to choose, what we feel are the best candidates for the job. Clearly here we have two people that have served in capacities. I personally feel one that served in more capacities than the other, but we're leaning towards the other person. And I think maybe it's more feelings versus true job qualifications. So I guess we maybe need to look at our process going forward as to how we do categorize people and how would we do the same in an employment situation. And basically we ask our people to fill out it says Citizen Advisory Committee, but it's pretty much kind of a job. It's based off our job application. So would we be selecting the same people in a job application as we are in our citizen volunteer? And maybe we don't need that, but I think at some point we need further discussion how we select and how we pick and how we choose people for our citizen advisory committees.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, thanks. I would be interested in having that discussion. I will say that for myself, Mr. Reddick's agricultural background and current involvement in farming is part of my decision.
I think
Commissioner Jacob.
He's a check farmer. I don't think he actually works the land.
Are you familiar with
Mr.
Mike
Flynn?
Flynn's agricultural background?
I'm not. I know that he's a dentist.
He's always had beef cattle.
He's a farmer.
He's a farmer. He has land that he runs more actively than Bob Reddick. So, I mean, your last comment seems like it would make you lean more towards Mike Flynn. So, always, and has many, many tractors. He's a tractor fanatic.
Is that right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yep.
If you go by the Amish market, the last 20 years, there's been a lineup of Mike Flynn's tractors. Yeah. Mhm.
And it was hard to beat his sheep at the
So
4-H sheep.
I think we've changed Commissioner Meyer's mind. She'll probably, because I'm sure it's not political.
There's a lot of factors.
Any further discussion? Yeah, I personally take on the qualifications, and I do consider it a job application. These people work for us even though they are volunteers. So I go through this process very distinctly and try to evaluate their experiences and their background and their overall fitness or fit with the process that we're hiring them for. So is there any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to support Mr. Reddick for the vacancy on the Board of Adjustments. All those in favor, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of supporting Mr. Reddick signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Nay.
Nay.
Thank you. The motion passes 3-2, so Mr. Reddick is our, filling our vacancy. Okay, we have Commissioner Ward.
Just a comment, page 79, it says, and this is Mr. Reddick's application, it says, how did you hear about this opportunity? I guess the grapevine works. That's what he said, the grapevine.
We were going to talk about,
Yeah, we are talking about the Personnel Board of Appeals and the Stockton, Rolling Stone, Minnesota City watershed vacancies.
I'll make a motion that we list that on the grapevine.
Okay,
Yeah.
it works. Is there a second to Commissioner Jacobs' motion?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion to list our vacancies in the usual places, including the grapevine. All those, is there further discussion?
Well, a comment. So we were just having this lengthy discussion about water. Isn't it interesting that, of course, Stockton, Rolling Stone, Minnesota City, it's a relatively small watershed, but we have nobody that, and part of it is that, and I've had comments from the public, is why do I want to put myself out there anymore? You look at the national level, the local, even the local level, the harassment, the derogatory, name calling and comments that are made, that it is going to become more difficult, in my opinion, to get people to sit on these boards because of the tenure of the public. And so I know Stockton, Rolling Stone, Minnesota City, they have levy authority. They can raise taxes, but there's a lot of people living in that area that they don't want that extra added responsibility. So I don't know if, like, on that particular, I know our boards, we give them a small stipend, which maybe covers their mileage. Well, they can do mileage and such, but heaven forbid somebody has to hire a babysitter or something. That doesn't even cover the cost of that. So again, in our review of how we select people and such, we may want to look at what our compensation is too for some of these.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Ward, I totally agree. In the 3 years I was on the Planning Commission, I found that the meetings were frequently contentious and that people did shake things at me and raise their voice at me, and you're right, it isn't pleasant. And I really do wish that we could not get, what happens is people have to be highly motivated in order to apply, either on one side or the other or some other side, however many sides there are. But so that then folks who are kind of more moderate and centrist are unruly. And you're absolutely right, and I would love for us to figure out a way.
One of my solutions is that we do Fillmore counties and
Yeah,
Fillmore does
they do
ours, and we
ours.
take the.
Well,
Maybe we're too close.
I kind of see your point, though. I kind of see your point.
That you have a totally neutral.
Yep.
You don't. But then we talk about local control. So
Almost sounds regional to me,
But
Commissioner Ward.
I just want you to know that I 100% I do share your.
Okay, did I see a light?
Yes,
No.
mine.
Oh, Mr. Fritz.
For clarification, I assume you're not telling us to advertise for these things, because that usually
Yeah.
expend funds. This is put it on the
Internal.
website,
Yes,
talk
is
about
that-
it, whatever we can. That's
That was my
on the
intention.
grapevine. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And
Free,
Yeah.
free social
Free
media.
social media, yeah.
yeah, I agree, the Stockton Rolling Stone Minnesota City Watershed. I do believe they have a small stipend. I also know from attending meetings that occasionally people bring in such goodies as huge bag of fresh asparagus. And so there are some perks for those who are attending the meetings, but I think we do need to look at our issues in that area. Are we ready to vote on advertising through our internet and on our website, excuse me, and the Grapevine for these two openings? No further discussion. All those we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Ward, to advertise these positions. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, excuse me, let's skip on to Mr. Moga.
No,
7-2.
7.2.
Oh, excuse me,
Sheriff, law enforcement.
2 pages stuck together. Law Enforcement Memorial Day, yes, don't want to forget that.
Motion to approve the resolution?
A second?
Okay, we have a motion to approve the resolution of proclaiming Law Enforcement Memorial Day on May 15th by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Jacob. All those in favor, any discussion?
I see they want somebody to be there.
Yeah, I have attended in the past. Usually it's the chair. Yeah. So if anyone else, of course, hopefully we'll have good weather. It's right out here in the courtyard between the courthouse and the law enforcement center. It's quite a gathering. The veterans play taps rather movingly, although it is a tape, I'm told. But they're there and they do the right thing. So I would encourage anybody to attend. It's at 12 o'clock at noon on the 15th in that location. Is there any further discussion?
So it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
At noon.
At
At
noon.
LEC.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And rain or shine, so bring your umbrella if it's not shine.
It's not shine.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor of approving the resolution proclaiming Law Enforcement Memorial Day signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the motion passes 5-0. Now we have Mr. Moga. Thank you for being so patient.
We'll do the update on the March financials. Looking at the March revenues for the revenue fund, we started at 11.6. Actual revenues were 332,000. Actual expenses were 2 million. Ending cash in the revenue fund were 9.8. Starting out the year in the revenue fund, we started at 14.1. Actual revenues are 1.2. Actual expenses are 5.4. Ending balance is 9.8. The variance between the 19 and 18 year for March would have been a negative 4.2 compared to a negative 3.7. Grand total for the departments that are being represented, which is our recycling, highway, and community services, is a negative 5.6 compared to a negative 5.9. I do want to point out that the community services at this point is actually in a negative balance, but actually they are trending better than they did last year. Mm-hmm. Any questions on this document? If not, we'll look at the summary revenue. Beginning cash flow started at 18.6. Actual revenues are 5.4, and the actual expenses are 10.9. Ending cash is 13.1, and the variances are the 5.4 compared to the 5.9 of last year. Any questions on this document? If not, we'll go to the summary budget. Summary budget, we're 25% of the way through the year at this point, or as what we were talking about. There are two departments that are actually higher at this point. It's the general is 20.7, and human services is at 26. But again, the human services is actually, the revenues are up compared to last year. And there are nothing at this point that's drawing alert to that we have to be concerned at. I've been we'll just keep on monitoring.
Excuse me.
Any questions on this document? If not, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a working session scheduled. So do we need to take a? We need to adjourn.
You have to do communications and then.
Oh, sorry. Yes, communications, and then we can adjourn and go into working session with a break in between. Okay, Commissioner Ward, did you
No, I
have any?
didn't have any.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, so I went to the quarterly meeting of the Southeast Minnesota Emergency Medical Services Board. Just one of many things I didn't know that existed, didn't know what they did. Found it pretty informative. They do a lot of work teaching.
Don't worry about it. It's a test.
Teaching first responders, yeah.
Heather moved.
Yes.
Yeah. And the one thing that I will share is that it was like a repeat of some stuff I heard in soil water, which is to say that they're concerned about what's happening with the budget at the state level, concerned that they're not going to get their funding. They apparently asked us last year for a one-time contribution. They were distressed over whether they should do that again, and are going to wait to see what happens at the state level first, so.
Okay. I attended the open house for the Hiawatha Valley Mental Health, and particularly their peer support program is growing and has been very strong. This program was also discussed in another meeting I was at for gaps in the housing in our area as a resource. So it is starting to be organic. It's also Mental Health Awareness Month for May, and so I have a selection of bracelets if anyone wants to take this on. The nice thing is the phone number for the Southeast Regional Crisis Line is on the bracelet. So you can always have it with you to either give the bracelet to someone else or to strike up a conversation on mental health. I also attended the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and we had a report on a program called CRAFT, which actually works with mothers and with children under 5. And they had some interesting statistics to report on their work. And they're currently working with 13 mothers and 22 children, so they're hard at work. And we also had an update on the Veterans Court, which operates in the 3rd District every other month, I believe. And I know Law Day was just this last weekend. I don't know if Attorney O'Laughlin will report on that or not, but we had every 6th grader in the county except for St. Charles going through the courthouse as a learning experience, and the mock trial was on vaping. So some discussion. So there was some discussion with each of those classes of students because the students in the gallery become the jury. So they had to decide the incidence of that particular case. So that's always interesting to see what their thought process is. That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, I don't believe we need a second on a motion to adjourn. So let's adjourn at 10:09.